Some of us are born to create and some of us are born to serve, my brother Julian announced, raising his glass to the room full of investors. Here's to the little people who keep the lights on so the geniuses can work. My parents laughed. They were minutes away from selling my life's work for $850 million, and they still treated me like the help. I stood in the corner holding the empty champagne bottle, invisible in my plain black dress. I didn't cry. I didn't say a word. I just waited for them to take a sip. Then, under the table, I pressed the single button on my phone that would turn their victory into a crime scene. Before I tell you exactly what appeared on that screen and why my brother is now facing 20 years in federal prison, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. I want to know who is witnessing this. I slipped out the heavy glass doors before the first sip of champagne hit their throats. Inside, the air was thick with congratulations and the smell of expensive cologne. Outside in the corridor, it was dead silent. I didn't run. Running looks guilty and I wasn't guilty. I was the executioner. My name is Alara. I'm 28 years old and for the last decade, my family has treated me like a ghost in the machine. Useful when things are broken, invisible when things are working. They thought I was just the quiet sister who liked computers. They didn't know I was the architect of the very thing they were selling. I walked down the hallway, my heels clicking on the marble floor, counting the steps to the server closet. I reached into my clutch and pulled out my old security badge. Julian thought he had stripped me of everything. My title, my equity, my voice. But arrogance makes people sloppy. He had forgotten to deactivate my physical access. The reader beeped green and the lock clicked open. The room hummed with the sound of fans and cooling units. It was the heartbeat of the deal happening down the hall. I approached the main console. My hands weren't shaking. I felt a strange, cold calm settling over me. I wasn't just here to stop a demo. I was here to stop a robbery. See, Julian hadn't just stolen my code. 2 days ago I found the paperwork in his home office. When I was 18 he had me sign a general power of attorney. It's for tax purposes, Alara, he had said, smiling that charming smile. So I can handle the boring stuff for you. I believed him. I trusted him. He used that signature to mortgage my entire trust fund. He didn't go to a bank. Banks ask too many questions. He went to hard money lenders. Private equity sharks who charge exorbitant interest and take everything you own if you miss a payment by a single day. Julian had leveraged my future, my home and my inheritance to finance the bridge loan for this acquisition. If this deal closed he would pay them off and I would never know. If it failed I would be destitute by morning. He was gambling with my life to buy his glory. I typed in my admin credentials. The screen flickered to life. I didn't need to write a complex virus or hack the mainframe. I just needed to take back what was mine. The entire system relied on a single master API key, a digital handshake that connected the software to the database. That key was registered to me. I typed the command, revoke access. I pressed enter. On the rack in front of me, the status light for the main drive blinked once, twice, and then turned from a steady, healthy green to a hard, unblinking red. The hum of the drive stopped. I reached out and physically pulled the backup drive from its slot. It was warm in my hand. I dropped it into my purse next to my lipstick. Just like that, the engine of their $850 million vehicle was gone. I checked my reflection in the dark monitor. I looked the same as I had 5 minutes ago, the quiet, submissive sister. But I wasn't her anymore. I turned around and walked back toward the party. The champagne was probably just being poured. It was time to watch them choke on it. I stood in the hallway, the cool air of the ventilation system hitting my face, but my mind was dragged back 6 months. Back to the basement. People ask why I stayed. Why I wrote the code in the first place if I knew they were monsters. They don't understand that when you are raised in a cage, the hand that feeds you looks like love, even when it's poisoning you. 6 months ago, while Julian was finalizing the pitch deck for this acquisition, I was living underground. Literally. My parents had converted the wine cellar of their Greenwich mansion into a workspace. They told me it was for my own good, to keep me focused, to keep me safe from distractions. It was a prison with Wi-Fi. I remember the smell vividly, damp concrete, ozone from the overheating servers, and the metallic tang of stale coffee. I sat in a Herman Miller chair that my mother claimed cost $2,000, as if an expensive chair made up for the lack of sunlight. Upstairs I could hear them. It was the night of the summer gala. The floorboards vibrated with the bass of the string quartet and the heavy footsteps of caterers. Through the vents, the smell of drawn butter and roasted lobster drifted down, thick and taunting. I hadn't eaten a hot meal in 2 days. My mother, Catherine, came down around 9 p.m. She was wearing a silk gown that cost more than my entire wardrobe. She didn't bring me a plate from the party. She brought me a tray with a cold turkey sandwich and a blister pack of pills. "Vitamins, darling," she said, her voice dripping with that terrifying synthetic sweetness. "To help you focus." We need the beta version by morning. They weren't vitamins. They were stimulants. Amphetamines she got from her private doctor to keep me coding for 20 hours a stretch. I took them because if I didn't, the work stopped. And if the work stopped, the threats started. Threats about my mental health, about being institutionalized, about being left on the street with nothing. I swallowed the pills. I ate the dry sandwich. I kept typing. Around midnight, the door opened again. It was Julian. He was drunk on expensive scotch and adrenaline. He leaned against the doorframe in his bespoke tuxedo, loosening his tie, watching me type like I was a zoo animal performing a trick. You look like a corpse, Ilara, he laughed, swirling his drink. I haven't slept in 3 days, Julian, I said, my voice raspy. The architecture's collapsing. I need time. He walked over and spun my chair around. He didn't hit me. He did something worse. He grabbed my face, his fingers digging into my jaw, forcing me to look at him. You don't need time. You need gratitude, he hissed. Look at you. You can't talk to people. You can't sell. You have zero social value. You are a liability to this family. We found a way to make you useful. You should be thanking us for giving your pathetic little life a purpose. He let go of my face and walked away, leaving the door slightly ajar so I could hear the laughter from the party upstairs, the sound of people living the life my work was paying for. That was the night I stopped trying to please them. That was the night I started writing the kill switch. I blinked, pulling myself back to the present. The hallway of the conference center was bright and sterile. The ghost of Julian's grip on my jaw faded, replaced by the cold weight of the hard drive in my purse. They thought they broke me in that basement. They were wrong. They just stripped away everything that was soft, leaving only the weapon underneath. I checked my phone. The demo was scheduled to start in 4 minutes. Julian would be looking for me. He would expect his submissive, terrified sister to be standing by with more champagne ready to serve. I straightened my dress. I walked back toward the glass box. It was time to join the party. I rounded the corner toward the conference room, and a hand shot out from the alcove, seizing my upper arm. It wasn't a gentle grip. It was a vice. I didn't scream. I just looked up. Julian was leaning against the wall, hidden from the view of the investors down the hall. Under the harsh halogen lights, the cracks in his facade were visible. He was sweating, a fine sheen of moisture on his upper lip that his expensive foundation couldn't hide. His pupils were blown wide, vibrating with a cocktail of adrenaline and terror. Where have you been? He hissed, his voice low and wet. The buyers are asking for the demo. If you embarrass me, Ilara. I was getting ice, I said, my voice flat. Like you asked. He squeezed my arm harder, his nails digging into the soft flesh. He pulled me close, so close I could smell the scotch on his breath, masking the scent of fear. Listen to me, he whispered, and for the first time I saw the monster clearly. Not the charming brother who charmed investors, but the desperate gambler who had bet everything on a hand he didn't hold. This deal closes in 20 minutes. The wire transfer hits the account by midnight. If it doesn't, if you do anything to slow this down. He leaned in, his lips brushing my ear. I will use that power of attorney to liquidate every cent you have saved. I will empty your personal accounts. And then tomorrow morning, I will file a petition to have you declared mentally incompetent. Mom and Dad are already on board. We'll say the stress of the failed startup broke you. You'll wake up in a state ward, Ilara. And I will leave you there. He pulled back to look at me, a cruel smile touching his lips. You know I can do it. You know no one will believe the quiet, weird sister over the CO. It was a perfect threat. It relied on the very architecture of abuse they had built around me for years. My silence, my isolation, my supposed fragility. He wasn't just threatening my money, he was threatening my autonomy. He was promising to bury me alive. In the past I would have trembled. I would have begged. I would have promised to be good. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I was the one holding the kill switch. I understand, Julian, I said. My pulse didn't even jump. The code is ready. Are you? He stared at me, searching for a crack for the fear he fed on. When he didn't find it, he scoffed, released my arm, and shoved me slightly toward the door. Fix your face, he snapped, straightening his tie. You look like a ghost. He turned and strode into the conference room, the mask of the golden boy slipping back into place instantly. I watched him go. He thought he was walking into his coronation. He didn't know he was walking into a slaughterhouse. The air inside the conference room was pressurized, heavy with the scent of leather, dry cleaning chemicals, and $850 million. The buyers sat on one side of the long mahogany table. They were sharks, executives from a global pharmaceutical giant. They didn't smile. They didn't make small talk. They just stared at Julian with the dead-eyed focus of predators assessing a meal. My parents sat near the back, beaming like royalty. My father gave me a sharp nod, gesturing for me to refill the water pitchers. I moved silently to the side of the room, taking my place in the shadows. "Gentlemen," Julian began, his voice booming with charisma. He paced in front of the massive 80-inch monitor. "What you are about to see isn't just software. It is the evolution of the human genome." He clicked a remote. The screen came alive with complex visualizations, DNA helices spinning, data points connecting. It was beautiful. It was brilliant. It was mine. "I wrote the genome core," Julian lied, tapping his chest. "I spent 3 years building the neural architecture that allows this system to predict cancer risks with 99% accuracy. It is my life's work." The lead buyer, a man named Sterling with eyes like flint, leaned forward. "Show us. Run the live simulation." Julian smiled. He sat at the command laptop at the head of the table. "With pleasure." He typed in his credentials. He hit the big green button marked Execute. On the screen, a progress bar appeared. "Loading dataset. Complete. Initializing neural pathways. Complete. Analyzing." The bar moved smoothly to 10%. Then 20%. This was the trap. In coding, we call it a dependency. Think of it like a high-performance sports car. Julian had stolen the car. He had the body, the wheels, the leather seats. He looked great sitting in the driver's seat. But the engine, the actual mathematical logic that made the thing move, lived on an external server. It required a constant digital handshake, a ping to my private API key to keep running. For the first 10 seconds, the system ran on cached memory. The Trojan horse. It looked perfect. Julian glanced at the investors, his smile widening. He thought he had won. Then the cash ran out. The system reached out to the server for the next line of code. It knocked on the door. But I had changed the locks. The progress bar froze at 33%. The hum of the laptop fans spiked, whirring loudly in the silent room. The spinning DNA helix on the big screen stuttered and stopped. Julian tapped the enter key. Nothing. He tapped it again harder. "Just a moment," he chuckled, a nervous sound. "High bandwidth connection. Little bit of lag." He looked at the screen. A small spinning wheel appeared. The wheel of death. Sterling didn't blink. "Mr. Townsend?" It's just loading," Julian said. Sweat beaded instantly on his forehead. "The Wi-Fi in here is spotty." It wasn't the Wi-Fi. The code was screaming into the void, looking for a master that wasn't there. I stood in the corner, clutching the water pitcher, watching the blood drain from my brother's face. He typed furiously now, his composure cracking. He tried to restart the sequence. "Error. Connection refused. Error. Administrative access revoked." The silence in the room stretched, thin and tight as a wire about to snap. My mother shifted in her seat, her jewelry clinking. My father looked at Julian, his eyes narrowing. "Julian," Sterling said, his voice quiet and dangerous. "Is there a problem?" Julian looked up. The terror I had seen in the hallway was back, magnified 1,000 times. He looked at me. For a split second he realized. Then the screen flickered. The spinning wheel disappeared. And the red letters began to form. The screen behind Julian didn't just go black. It flooded the room with a violent, crimson light. Massive white text burned onto the display, replacing the spinning DNA helix. It wasn't a crash report. It was a legal notice. Error 451. Unavailable for legal reasons. Below the code, in crisp, undeniable font. Warning. Intellectual property infringement detected. Source code ownership. Etheria Technologies C. Status. Unauthorized usage. Access revoked. Report. Evidence of securities fraud logged. The room went absolute zero. The only sound was the whir of the projector fan, struggling to cool down the machine that had just executed its master. Julian stood frozen, his skin bathed in the red glow of the screen. He looked like a deer in headlights, if the deer was wearing a $5,000 tuxedo and realized the headlights belonged to a freight train. "What is this?" Sterling asked. His voice wasn't angry yet. It was something worse. Curious. It's a glitch," Julian stammered, his hands flying over the keyboard, hitting escape, hitting Ctrl-Alt-Delete. Nothing worked. The screen was locked. We've been hacked. Someone is messing with the feed. Alara. He yelled my name, pointing a shaking finger at me in the corner. Fix this. Call IT. I didn't move. I didn't reach for my phone. I just looked at him. I can't fix it, Julian, I said, my voice cutting through the panic. It's not a glitch. It's a copyright claim. Sterling turned from me to the screen. Etheria Technologies, he read. Who is that? Julian laughed nervously. Nobody. A shell company. Probably an attack on our stock. Townsend Industries owns all the code. I wrote it. Ping. Sterling's tablet lit up. Then his CFO's phone. Then another device. I had timed the trigger to the API revocation. Sterling opened the email and scanned the attachment. A provisional patent application. Filed, notarized, timestamped 12 months ago. Julian, he said quietly. This is a certified patent for the genome core architecture. It's fake. Julian shouted, sweat pouring. A forgery. Sterling kept reading. It lists the inventor. Not you. Not Townsend Industries. He looked at me. Alara Townsend. My parents gasped. She stole it. Julian screamed. She was my assistant. She signed an ND. I created it, I said, stepping forward. And I never signed an NDA for that code. The power of attorney you used to mortgage my trust was fraud. Selling IP you don't own to a public company is securities fraud. Sterling stood. The room shifted. You represented clear title to this IP, he said coldly. You leveraged it for a bridge loan. If you don't own the code, this company is worthless. I can explain. Don't. Sterling turned to his CFO. Call the E. Notify the bank. Terminate the deal for cause. He tore the letter of intent in half. The deal is dead. And if she's right, you're going to prison. Julian collapsed. The leverage he held over me vanished. The lenders would seize everything by morning. As I turned to leave, the doors exploded open. Police. On the ground. 3 armed officers stormed in, aiming at me. I dropped to my knees instantly. She's suicidal, my father screamed. She has a knife. A textbook setup. A false psychiatric hold. Discredit the whistleblower. Bury the crime. Officer, I said calmly, loud enough for body cams. I am unarmed. I am not suicidal. I am a whistleblower. I instructed him to remove a plastic envelope taped to my chest. Inside was a notarized affidavit of sanity, signed yesterday by 3 court-certified psychiatrists. The next page. A restraining order filed that morning against my parents and Julian. Check the timestamp on the 911 call, I said. They called before the deal failed. This is swatting. That's a felony. The officer lowered his weapon. Dispatch, cancel the hold. Verified false report. I need a supervisor. My parents' tears evaporated. The exits were blocked, not for me but for them. I walked out as handcuffs snapped shut behind me. 3 weeks later, I sat in a quiet coffee shop, reading the final headlines. Assets seized, bail denied, false police report, charges filed. I deleted the last 3 contacts from my phone. The coffee cost $5. I paid with money I earned. For code I own. It was bitter. Hot. Perfect. Tasted like freedom.